You're listening to the Hello DTC show presented by Beaconstac, a show where champions from consumer brands reveal their secret sauce for growth. This is where the best DTC stories are narrated, from one successful brand to another.
Hello everyone, and thanks for listening to Hello DTC presented by Beaconstac. I'm Monica, Marketing Manager at Beaconstac, a solution that helps any CPG business activate a DTC channel for their business. So I believe building a connection with a brand is very similar to making a friend in real life. I remember the first time when I went to an undergrad college, I was scanning the classroom to find people who I could relate with. And that was followed by quick interactions with some of them that went on to, building some sort of an affection and trust with them. And eventually they became friends for life. And I think the same is true for how we build relationships with brands. As consumers, we only pick brands that seem very relatable to us and offer some level of interaction that builds awareness, affection, and eventually brand loyalty. One brand that's acing brand relatability is Huron. It's a men's hygiene and wellness brand. And I mean it, it's the internet's best smelling men's product. Our guest today, Matt, co founder and CEO of Huron, believes that education and relatability are a one two punch. And we'll get to discussing that in a bit. But hey, Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much, Monica. Excited to chat today.
How are you doing?
Doing well. It's today is an interesting day. It's actually our second anniversary of Huron, so it's an exciting day. It's very timely.
It is. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Cool. So it's a great day to talk more about the brand. What do you absolutely love about it, and what has your 2-year journey been like?
Yeah, geez. I think to go through the full 2 years, it might require a little longer than a half hour, 45 minutes. But no, I mean, it's been an amazing ride. I mean, certainly learnings along the way, but I've been really pleased and impressed by how a small team of 4 have been able to kind of grow and scale this vision and mission, which really hasn't changed since day one, which is to provide amazing quality kind of personal care and grooming items to guys who are kind of figuring it out. So being that helping hand of sorts, and to your point in the intro, kind of building those relationships, in the example that you mentioned in university, you get the benefit of the in-person interaction. We do a lot of those things digitally, so that's a little bit more difficult, but doing what we can to kind of humanize the brand and make it feel more than just, an assortment of personal care products that we're selling. Huron means so much more than that.
That's amazing. But from what I understand, for most men, just the simple act of walking into a store to, choose skincare products itself is loaded with stigma. And in that case, what does your marketing strategy look like? What has it been like? Because clearly they're not really going ahead and searching for something like that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, we use traditional marketing outlets today. So if you think paid search, paid social, Facebook, Google, etc. So we don't have a huge retail presence today, so it's not necessarily walking into a Huron store to buy Huron. But I think what that means for us in the digital world, in the D2C world, it's how can we tell a very relatable brand story, or how can we position ourselves in a way that makes sense. It's a constant iterative process of trying new assets, trying new creative, and thinking about different ways that we can resonate with someone who may be a little bit more in the know in the skincare game, which we certainly have plenty of those customers, but also being able to serve and help guys who might be using the same mass market products that they've been using for 15 or 20 years. So what I think what's unique about Huron is we're able to kind of talk to both consumers without really morphing our voice necessarily. It's this grounded, relatable, down-to-earth approach that I think has kind of been a strong point of difference for us as we've continued to grow and scale.
That's amazing. So let's take a step back in understanding this. So what's the level of education and awareness about skincare, in men? To begin with, are they really actively looking out for a good face wash or a good shampoo?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends. And there's kind of a spectrum of folks who might have a routine that they've been practicing and refining for years. But at the other end of the spectrum, where I kind of first got my start in skincare, like I was just using the same products I had always used because that was the grocery store that I went to or the drugstore that my mom brought products at. So kind of interrupting that habit loop of sorts to say, like, how can we be a moment for intentionality? How can we be a moment for pause to say, like, maybe I should be exploring something else. So for us, like, in addition to the relatability aspect, we have a unique angle in the sense that we really try and inform a lot of our consumers, but also just in products and in categories that are tangential to pure play skincare, right? Like, we have a series on Instagram called Let's Talk About, where we've mentioned things like mental health, humidity, and what that does to the skin. Let's talk about acne or body acne. So many different maybe problems and solutions that guys can deal with, but just like also, topics that are very much in vogue and kind of talked about in society. And I think, again, being able to kind of step away from just pure play skincare and have a broader approach has really kind of opened the eyes for a lot of our consumers and potential consumers. One of the things that we really like about the Let's Talk About series is we get obviously additional analytics on Instagram in terms of what we call quiet engagement, which is sends and saves. And a lot of the posts that we put up in the Let's Talk About series get an insane amount of engagement there, where maybe a guy's not going to like a post on humidity, but he's really curious in the subject matter and like how that actually affects his skin. So I think being able to kind of establish ourselves not only as like a fun brand that's kind of, disrupting, the men's space in the sense that this is a very down to earth, grounded approach, but also we can back it up with decades of know-how. My co-founder Matt spent 20 plus years developing product for Estee Lauder, so building some of the best products for the best brands in the world. So we can kind of channel that level of knowledge and know-how and bring it to a guy who's interested in kind of exploring the space a bit further, but might not know where to start. So I think that, to your point earlier, that 1-2 punch has really kind of resonated with our audience.
Yeah, I think this campaign, when we last spoke about it, the last time when we were talking about it, and you mentioned this, it was really mind blowing. And then I went back and I looked it up on Instagram, and truly, I mean, it's doing a great job of educating people. But you briefly touched upon, how you measure it. Can you talk a little more about it? Because usually with campaigns like this, it's difficult to really measure the impact of it, right? So how are you doing that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Instagram allows you as kind of the brand owner a little bit more insights than you might see as a consumer kind of scrolling through the feed. So obviously we're all familiar with likes and comments, but on the back end, we can also see how many times that particular post was bookmarked or saved or sent, which we call shared. So we looked at saved and shares as a percent of total engagement. And for those posts, I mean, it can be anywhere from 25 to like 40%. So again, there might not be like the eagerness of a consumer to be like, oh, I really like this post on back acne, because that's like obviously like kind of a touchy subject. But maybe they're interested in because maybe that's a problem that they suffered with over the course of a number of years. So they're very curious as to like what's kind of behind the scenes happening here, and then maybe which products that we potentially offer in our assortment that can help them fight that particular issue. So for us, it's been a really powerful series, and I think it's something that we'll continue to lean into going forward.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Sometime back, you also mentioned, and I totally resonate with that, which is keeping things simple and minimizing choice is truly an art. And I think one of the brands that did it very well was Casper. And just one mattress, affordable pricing, and great customer experience, right? And Huron, in my opinion, is doing equally great job at it. It operates in an industry where men are focused on convenience over choice and just multiple products. What do you think the other brands in the industry or outside the industry get wrong when you talk about simplifying choices and just building relatability through that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think Casper is a really good example. And actually, our first hire came from Casper. And Johnny runs retention for us. He's done a great job. Kind of repositioning the question a little bit, I think instead of other brands that might have missed the mark, I think one of the things that we just realized about this category for us and for Huron is shopping for personal care or grooming products. It kind of comes at the point of decision fatigue, right? It's like oftentimes you make so many decisions during the day that the last thing you want to do is go to the store and buy body wash or buy face wash or investigate or educate yourself on like why I should be buying this versus that. So I think that's where we have an opportunity to kind of circle back to that quick 2, 3, 5 second educational tidbit where can we provide value, but can we do it through a vehicle that's very relatable? And I think being able to kind of mesh those two concepts has allowed us to take what is otherwise like kind of a weird subject to talk about, like very foreign to a lot of folks, chemistry based, but then make it like all of a sudden very down to earth and relatable. And I think being able to again grab something that is so nebulous and then speak about it very casually is something that certainly resonated with our base, because it always has been this category where it's like, I'm really interested, like maybe I am fighting some skin issues, but like I don't know where to start and I don't feel like I have the time to investigate all this stuff on my own. So I wish a brand would just tell me what to use and why and do it in a voice that speaks to me. And that's kind of what our mission has really been since day one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's very interesting what you have up on your website. It makes a bold claim saying that it's internet's best smelling product. And I'm curious to understand, how did you narrow down, or how did you get to the point where you were like, okay, this is my USP. This is what I'm going to put on my first fold. It's very interesting because I've rarely seen brands, who talk about something so basic but so important.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it kind of came to us through a lot of trial and error, right? Like we test a lot of things all the time, and copy is certainly one of them. So it was actually just a few weeks ago, and we are like, you know what? Let's change the homepage banner, and we're going to go with this. And we're like, cool, let's do it. I think one of the reasons why a lot of customers and consumers have appreciated Huron is because the level of complexity, but then the level of quality that comes from our fragrance profiles across the product. So, I said my business partner, Matt, our co-founder, I mean, in decades of building these products, he's gotten to know the world's biggest and best fragrance houses who we work with, who probably wouldn't otherwise work with a 4-person startup if it were not for him, right? So that access has been hugely helpful for us. And I think those sensorial elements in this category have really been the hook for so many consumers to date, right? It's, why do you use this product? And it smells good. But like, maybe there isn't even a thought around it conditions my skin, or I really like the exfoliating factor of this particular face wash. It smells good, and I like the way I feel when I use it. So, in kind of some of the learnings from the first year or so, we were so focused on talking about product quality and the level of ingredients and the clean ingredient profile, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which certainly resonated with a lot of customers, but we felt like we were missing a broader pool. So we kind of took a step back and said, what are our customers actually telling us? And then how can we spin that to be kind of a lure or a hook for new potential customers? So one of the exercises we went through is we combed through all of our reviews across all products, across all channels. So on our site, on Amazon, on retailer sites that we partner with, and said, like, what is our base telling us that we might be missing the mark on? And kind of unprovoked or unasked, when we looked at body wash, which was one of our hero products, anything with relation to smell, fragrance, scent was like overarchingly the number one facet that customers were attracted to or drawn to. So you're like, okay, well, this is really interesting, because without giving any direction, this is kind of the common thread of feedback that continues to emerge. We should scream this from the mountaintops, right? So then we started incorporating a lot of that copy into ads onto the website, as you noticed. Some of our marketing insert cards, even like high-level brand overviews that we send to potential partners. And I think that's been a huge win for us, because now there's a moment of intrigue, right? Like everyone knows like what they think smells good. So now there's like well, if this is claiming to be the internet's favorite smell, like I'm curious to see actually how it smells. So now there's like a little clickbait element of sorts that maybe says like, okay, like I'm willing to give this product a try.
Was there also user testing that you did around it just to, confirm the hypothesis that you were building from all the reviews and everything that you were getting? Was that required?
So we are fortunate in the sense we have a community of about 1,000 customers, which we've really leaned on for early product testing, thinking about new iterations on packaging, for instance, if we should explore that route, thinking about what new products customers would like to see from us going forward. So when we launched Hair, which was last November, that was really the first time that we kind of solicited feedback and reviews before we actually went to market with the products, which was a super fun exercise because we were able to send out basically like sample size bottles to close to 100, I think, different community members, maybe more. But we were getting early feedback around like, hey, I really like this element, I really like that element, and it was a total kind of open forum to say, okay, here are the elements or the aspects of this product that people are really gravitating towards. So while we may think that customers might find one attribute particularly interesting, like it's actually this thing that they're hanging on and really gravitating towards. So getting that kind of early buy-in from a lot of our community was pretty instrumental in thinking about how we've kind of positioned the products within the market, from the marketing copy, the ad copy, the website copy even, to make sure that we're getting off on the right foot as we kind of bring these products to market. And I think based on the success of that exercise, that's kind of now built into our launch strategy, which is, okay, T minus X number of weeks from launch, we have to make sure that we're getting product into the hands of our community members so that they can give these products a test drive and then offer feedback, reviews, etc., so that we can make any tweaks that we might need to make, but then also think about how do we articulate the benefits and attributes of the new product.
Yeah, 100%, definitely. And also, I think another aspect or an important aspect of brand relatability is also the color, because color is a powerful communication tool. We all know it just does not evoke just emotions and feelings, but everyone has a favorite color. Everyone hates a specific color, right? So how important does color play a role when you're deciding what your packaging is going to look like, what the website color. So basically, everything that's brand color. How does that play a role?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly plays a huge role. I think, the brand building exercise that we went through in early 2018 was super interesting. And I think one of the tactics that we did, and kudos to our creative agency for kind of leading the charge on this front, is we went out to every store. We bought so many products online and we just threw them all on a huge conference room table and said, what are the similarities here? Like, what does the market look like today? And I think some of the common threads that emerged, tall bottles, dark bottles, charcoal, black, just like very traditional masculine type look and feel. And we said, cool, let's be the exact opposite. So let's be short, fat, white, red, and let's see what we can do to kind of stand out. I think one of the things that was interesting in digging a bit further, especially in relation to color scheme in this category, and especially for guys, red has historically been a color that's been shied away from a little bit. And our hypothesis was like red often kind of is, synonymous with like a blemish or a breakout, or like a pimple. And like, so like the concept of like red and skincare is kind of like, eh. Now Old Spice is like red, obviously, and they're $1 bazillion brands. They've done quite well. But other than kind of that brand, there really weren't many brands kind of leaning into red as an accent color. So we're like, let's kind of give it a whirl. So it's kind of funny that the red, white, and blue color scheme emerged, but that was actually not intentional. It was more of a way to like step away from what everyone else was doing to figure out how we could be a bit different.
That's very interesting because honestly, it does, and especially when you talk about skincare, when it's a feminine product, it's usually pinks and whites. Whereas when you talk about men's product, it's usually the charcoal and the dark blues, etc. But yeah, red, white, and the royal blue, it definitely stands out. I think that's doing a great job. You also briefly spoke about in the beginning about user generated content. And the value it brings into community building, and of course keeping a community engaged is definitely hard. I think Glossier does a great job at it, where they had that Glossier in real life initiative, where every time their users use the product, they would upload a picture, and it would be featured on their social media, website, everywhere. Huron also does a very good job at it. You have a blog, you have a newsletter subscription, and you have an affiliate program. So how do you keep all of them, tight, and how do you keep that community engaged all the time?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think from a blog standpoint, that's something internally that we're drumming up a few times a month, I would say. I wish it would be more frequent, but it's hard. It's difficult, right? Because what we're trying to do in the blog is not just simply keyword stuff for SEO, but rather like, again, how are we providing value to the reader? Um, so I think that's certainly an area that we've leaned into and we've enjoyed leaning into, but it definitely is difficult to scale as a team of four. I think from the affiliate side, we work with a partner on that front who's done a really good job in helping us kind of shout Huron from the mountaintops, right? Like, how do we get in front of some of these outlets, whether it's the Men's Healths of the world or Men's Journal, or we were in Rolling Stone recently, which was amazing, or the Manual, or series GQ, a series of outlets where we feel like our potential customers or consumers are reading anyways. So how do we kind of get in front of them in an outlet that makes sense for them? So that's certainly an important piece. And then on the UGC side, whether it's asking our community for their favorite vacation photos where they're taking Huron, or just honestly, like, we get inbounds all the time being like, hey, I brought my jumbo to like this place, like I took a few pictures and we're like, this is amazing, like, can we use these? I think that almost immediacy of turnaround time has been pretty fun to see, and I think a lot of the folks who do send us content and assets really appreciate that. But again, the thought is kind of dialing back to the humanization element. Like, it's not just good-looking photos of bottles, right? Like, no one really wants to see that, but it's like, how am I incorporating Huron in my day-to-day life? Like, here's some jumbos like in this sick outdoor shower in Hawaii, like we posted a few days ago. Like, the photos were amazing, right? So it's just a way to kind of show appreciation for people who are sending us these assets by kind of championing them on our own internal outlets, but also kind of figuring out how those pieces of content kind of play into the overall thesis and narrative, which is a brand that has a personality, that is down to earth, that you can talk about in regular language and everyday speak, and kind of tying all those pieces together. Again, I think it kind of doubles back to the fact that we've hopefully provided a really good experience when that particular person ordered for the first time, let's call it, and then they really appreciated the product. So from there, it's on us as a brand to make sure that they come back for the next 5 to 10 years. So how do we roll out the red carpet so that they feel like they're not just a customer of Huron, that they're a part of Huron? Because I think for us in these early days, these first 2 years, we've really tried to lean into things that are not scalable. Because when you can do those things really, really well, that is the best way to onboard your first few thousand kind of maniacal brand loyalists. And then those people will then go tell all of their friends and family about Huron, and they're the best word of mouth spreaders you could have. So it's like, how do you treat that initial few cohorts of people? And then now I think we're kind of reaping the benefits of having rolled out the red carpet to these folks, and given them a experience that they've otherwise haven't really had in the personal care category.
Yeah, I think word of mouth is truly an underrated channel of growth, and it definitely works very well for a lot of brands. Also, like you said, once a person makes a commitment towards a brand, there's also on the brand to give it back to them. In it could be in terms of whatever the brand thinks is right, but you also have a newsletter, and from what I understand, it's filled with educational stuff. So what does that newsletter look like, and what purpose does that solve for someone who's a part of the brand family?
Yeah, I think it's kind of largely the same concept or premise of what we're doing either on the blog or the Let's Talk About series on Instagram. It's just a different medium, right? So with email, kind of like blog, there's a little bit of a longer form opportunity to talk about what's behind the scenes on the products, doing a deep dive on particular topics, maybe similar to what we're doing in the Let's Talk About series. It just gives a different medium for a consumer to digest the information. I mean, some people prefer reading long form captions on Instagram. Some people hate it. Some people love digging into blogs. Some people don't ever read blogs. Some people open every email. Some people have all their emails sent to the promo folder, right? So it's just everyone has kind of their own quirks or different ways to digest the information. And what we want to do is give people that optionality.
I mean, DTC as a space is very non-similar to the typical CPG space and the B2B B2C sort of world. So I'm just curious to understand, when you send out a newsletter, what does the open rate or the typical click-through rates for a newsletter going out in a DTC space look like? Because I think the customer is much more engaged with a DTC brand. So what are the typical numbers that one should expect?
It's a good question. I think our email person would probably be very upset if I told you. But I would say this: we segment very granularly, and what I mean by that is we have a few different cohorts that we start. So like the very basic structure that we started was purchasers who are engaged. So if you've purchased from us and you open up emails frequently and read the content and click, like, you're in one bucket. We have purchasers who haven't been recently engaged. So maybe there's a group of customers who have purchased from us previously, but maybe haven't opened an email in the past month or so. We have leads, so people who haven't purchased but are engaged. They continue to open emails, they click, but for whatever reason, they haven't found that one thing that will kind of push them over the edge and ultimately purchase. And then we have leads that aren't really engaged. And we treat those four cohorts very separately. And within each four cohort, we subdivide. So maybe it's engaged purchasers who first purchased the shampoo will get this email with this subject line, and that differs versus if you bought the body wash first. So there's a bunch of different ways that we segment, and what that allows us to do is create a much more personalized approach to these customers, so that if you, Monica, like if you made your first purchase as a shampoo and you're getting an email that seems relatively tailored because it's about your first purchase being the shampoo, and here are maybe other products that you would like, or here's a blog post that talks about the shampoo and why it's amazing, you're more likely to click and continue to open because you feel like these email campaigns are kind of addressing you on a one-to-one basis. So I would say that when we look at industry benchmarks across Klaviyo, who's our ESP, our open rates and click-through rates are incredibly strong, which I think that's a tip of the cap to really good content, but I also think it's a tip of the cap to how granular we segment people such that it feels like a very personalized brand experience. So I'm kind of popping out by not giving you numbers, but I hopefully broad brushstrokes. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think that the cohort approach really helps. I think that's a very smart way of doing it. Also, you have benchmarks for every cohort, so any iteration that you make will be against the right kind of people, and it does not dilute against just a person who has not been active with the brand for long. So that truly makes sense. I think this has been very insightful, Matt. Thanks a lot for doing this. Is there a last parting thought for a new brand who is looking to establish relatability as a narrative for themselves? Is there one tip?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think if relatability, customer experience is kind of part of the fundamental ethos of a brand, if that is your North Star, I guess my one piece of advice would be to like not waver from that. And that sounds not that insightful, but when you go through this journey, every single decision you make has an opportunity cost, right? If you're talking to this agency, you're not focused on this. If you're focused on this, you're not talking to this agency. So the way that we continue to operate as a small brand is what are we ultimately doing for the person that we're trying to help? And I think if you look at things kind of through that lens, it allows you to say like, nope, we're not ready for that yet, or this makes a ton of sense because like I think this will really unlock a lot of value for that customer. So I think being able to understand how these discussions, how these potential partnerships, relationships, etc., will ultimately solve or serve that end mission is something that's kind of suited us well and allowed us to like really be lean as a team, but also be super efficient with our time and resources and efforts, which in the startup world, like everyone's kind of vying for your time, right? So if you can continue to keep your mission and your why top of mind at all times across the organization, then that's kind of like the best guiding light to help you determine like, are we ready to go pay for an agency on Facebook or should we continue to do it in-house? Are we ready to go do this? I mean, I was chatting with my co-founder Matt this morning, just kind of talking about like the 2 years. I mean, to think about what we've learned in 2 years has been insane. Like when we turned on our website, I had no idea what SEO was, like no clue. And now we're like, we rip through SEO all the time, right? I had no idea what the back end of Facebook looked like. And now we're drawing up ads and creative and, looking at click-through rates and CPMs. Like you just kind of figure it out. So I think for us, what's been really interesting is having that customer as the North Star has really allowed us to continue to lean into the relatability piece. And I think that's been a point of differentiation for us because that's never wavered. Like that has always been the case. So we've really kind of stuck to our guns on that front, and it's paid dividends.
Yeah, customer as a North Star. I think that's the takeaway for me from here. And congratulations on your 2 years. You're doing a fabulous job. The brand looks phenomenal. It's everything is really working out very well.
Thank you.
Thank you.